I wanted to share an extract from my granddad's journal. My granddad did something you're not meant to do during the wartime years. He kept a journal. And I'm not talking about a full blow-by-blow account of every activity and every day, but he took enough notes knowing that when he returned to the UK, he would be able to write up his story, the story of his war years. The reason I'm sharing it today is that my 10-year-old son, Jamie, has been asking me about Great Grandad and what Great Grandad did during the war. And I have only had one thing kind of published in my life, and it's actually my granddad's story within the Scots magazine, which is particularly pleasing for a couple of reasons. One, my granddad loved the Scots magazine, and I'm sure it would tickle him no end to know that his story was printed in the Scots magazine. The other reason is that my granddad had handed over the whole manuscript to a couple of small local publishing houses with a view to getting his story published. And it was rejected time and time again. And I know it was a source of frustration for my granddad that the message that came back time and time again was there's not enough blood and gore. You know, it's not an exciting enough war story. Which, as a storyteller myself, I think is a pity. You know, I think it's sad because all of these stories, including my granddad's stories, they die with people unless they're captured. And I'm so proud, not just of what my granddad did during the Second World War to serve his country. I'm proud of the fact that he took the time and trouble to create this story. So as I say, there's a short extract that I want to share with you that I've shared with Jamie today that just talks about one moment in time. And the plan eventually is to do a complete audio recording of my granddad's journal, which I will do as soon as I possibly can. And I'll be very, very proud to share more of my granddad's words. The title of the piece that appeared in the Scots magazine on the January 2013 edition is Escape from Singapore, and the subheading is A First-Hand Account of a Perilous Wartime Journey. My granddad, James W. Anderson, passed away in November 2009, aged 90. He left not just happy memories, but a written testimony of his life. It's called From a Rural Background. It covers a period of around 63 years and includes his wartime experiences, including this account of his escape from Singapore. On Saturday, February the 14th, I was told Singapore would surrender and that units who thought they could escape were free to do so. My Gov had been asked to take charge of the engine room of the Coastal 2 and had agreed, subject to me acting as his assistant. We got going in the early hours of February the 15th, 1942, with I think around 40 people on board. The Gov and I had got the engine going with no problems. Progress during the night was slow, and at daylight we were still in sight of Singapore under its pall of smoke from burning oil tanks and buildings. We saw no signs of the other boats which had left around the same time. During the day we made steady progress and a shipboard routine was established. The second night at sea we picked up survivors. They were RAF men whose ship had been bombed. One of them was badly wounded. He was given what attention we could muster. Then we got underway again. We sighted Sumatra on the third day, making landfall near the mouth of a big river. We picked up some information from native fishermen, and the officers decided to take the Coastal to upriver. The river banks were mainly jungle, covered, and this made us wary. Late the next day, we reached a small town with some jetties. This was as far as we could go by boat. The big snag, however, was that half the buildings were in flames, and the place was more or less deserted. The Coastal 2 had served us well, and the Gov and I were sorry to have to open the seacocks and throw away some vital parts of the engine. 4 or 5 civilian trucks were found in working order, and a small convoy was organised. Things were a bit crowded on the trucks, as the trucks were fairly small. The wounded RAF men on his makeshift stretcher required a lot of space, but no one complained. Progress was good to start with, and we learned we were making for Padang, a port on the south coast of the island. When we got into inhabited areas, we were well enough received by the local people and got some shelter for the night. There didn't seem to be any panic regarding the Japanese, and not much evidence of the Dutch army either. The officers were able to get the wounded RAF man into the local hospital. I often wondered how he got on afterwards. Suitably refreshed, we got going again the next morning. As far as I remember, the only people we saw were a few labourers working on road repairs. Towards evening, we arrived at a fairly large town. Transport to Padang would be by rail from here. We were billeted in a school, and after a walk round, the Gov and I were able to enjoy a nice meal in a restaurant. The Dutch menu didn't deter us. We got away the next morning and arrived safely in Padang that afternoon. Our first glimpse of the harbour was not reassuring, only sunken ships. The town was a bit inland from the harbour, and on leaving on the train, we found some sort of an escape organisation had been set up by the British officers. After a day or two, we were given orders to prepare for a move. At the harbour, we boarded the British light cruiser Danny. The captain wasn't going to hang about, and we were out of the harbour within half an hour. We didn't know where we were headed, but we were on our way. That's one extract from my granddad's journal. And I thought it would help just to give a little bit of an explanation of a couple of the points. One of the things is, the line, we had no sign of the other boats which had left around the same time. It sounds ominous because it was. So many of the ships that had left from Singapore were blown out of the water, either torpedoed by Japanese submarines, or bombed from the air, or from artillery fire as well. So yeah, it was a small number of boats managed to escape, and my granddad always maintains how lucky they were. And he tells the story of actually a torpedo going under their boat at one stage during the adventure. The other thing to share is the destination. So where did my granddad go? So he went to Ceylon, which obviously now is Sri Lanka. So he served out the remaining of his war years in Colombo, the capital of Ceylon. And there were two options essentially for the escape committee. You either went to Australia or you went to Sri Lanka. There was other escape routes as well, but those were the two main ones. And certainly from my granddad's retelling, a lot of the escape party that tried to go to Australia were torpedoed when they were out in open water. So my granddad was very, very lucky. He's very lucky, and he was always conscious of how lucky he was. As I say, he served out the remaining years of the wartime in Colombo, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of the stories from my granddad's manuscript at a later stage. I'll probably have another read through of it and recording of it with slightly more professionalism, because there was a few stumbles along the way there. But hopefully you get an idea of my granddad's words, my granddad's experiences, and just how lucky an escape he had getting out of Singapore on the 15th of February 1942. Thanks for listening. Thanks for those who are interested. If you want to find out more, if you would like to be kept informed of when we'll be sharing a fuller version of my granddad's manuscript, then email kev@kevanderson.com, and as soon as I have a recording, I will share it. My intention with this is to share this publicly and for free, because I want as many people as possible to learn of my granddad and his remarkable experience during the Second World War, and just his remarkable life in general, because the manuscript does cover more than his war years. But certainly my granddad would admit that the motivation for him creating from a rural background was all to do with his wartime experiences. And as I said before, I feel that I'm very lucky that my kids, their kids, and their kids' kids will be able to hear and read the stories of Jim Anderson, aka my granddad. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.